You know what's crazy is that most athletes never reach their full potential. And it's not just because they have bad genetics or because they don't have the talent, but because their standards never match up to their goals. They say they want to play in college, they say they want to play pro, they say they want to play their sport as long as possible. They have these high goals, but they live with low standards. They skip the summer work, they eat like every other high schooler, and then they hope that it will somehow come together and they'll get to play, like every other elite athlete. Again, most athletes have D1 goals, but middle school standards. And this is one of the biggest reasons I wrote my book, the one that just released, From Nobody to Noticed. It's about athletes like Cam and Zeke who start off behind. They feel the gap between what they want and what they are doing, and then they finally, after getting burnt, after getting laughed at, after getting called out, basically, they decide to do something about it. Because you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your standards. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about why most athletes never reach their full potential and how to fix it. So let's start by unpacking the real reason athletes stay stuck: high goals and low standards. Everyone talks about where they want to go, but very few actually live like it. They say I want to play in college, but they skip the summer workouts. They show up out of shape and really just behind. They stay up till 2 a.m. They eat like 10-year-olds, not elite athletes, and it shows. It shows in how they play on the field, how they play on the court. And in the book, Cam and Zeke, they were the same way. They wanted to be great athletes, they wanted to be good athletes, but they had really low standards. They goofed off the entire summer, and it showed, in the very first day of preseason. They learned the hard way: what you say you want doesn't matter if how you live doesn't match it. And that's where confidence comes in, because confidence is what most athletes say they're lacking. Most athletes I talk to, they talk at some point about lack of confidence, but the issue isn't the real issue is because they're chasing in the wrong places. So you guys need to understand that confidence doesn't come after a coach or a teammate compliments you. It doesn't happen when you go all league or even when you're winning state. Real confidence that lasts, confidence that doesn't fade when you have a bad day, it comes from stacked reps. It comes from, it's earned. Every time you do what you say you're going to do, you increase that confidence. You don't just magically get confidence, you build it. So every time you follow through, every time you say you're going to do something and you follow through on it, you teach your brain, I can trust him or I can trust her. But every time you break that promise, you chip away at that trust. Just like when a friend breaks a promise, and you lose trust in them. You guys have plenty of examples of friends or family members who broke your trust because they didn't keep a promise that they set. And so really, really think about, what are you doing that is either building your confidence or decreasing your confidence? And so one easy place, one really, really easy place that you can start building this confidence, one easy place where you can start building trust in yourself by committing to it, is your nutrition. It's one of the easiest things that you can follow through on. It doesn't require a lot. But if you continue to rely on convenience, if you continue to not prioritize it and really be lazy about it, you're that's one area you're going to struggle with. That's one area where your confidence is going to struggle, but if you commit, like a lot of my athlete, well, all my athletes, but if you commit to nutrition like my athletes do, you don't have to work with me to do it, but if you do it consistently and you just start stacking those habits and you start stacking those wins, you're going to increase your confidence. My athletes, they gain confidence because they do the things nutrition wise. They stack those habits, those doable habits. Over time you do that, not only are you building that trust in yourself, but then you're also getting the results that come from it. You start getting stronger, you start getting faster, you start having more energy, you start playing like the athlete you are capable of. So really think about it. What do your habits tell you about yourself? What are your habits doing for your confidence? Are they helping your confidence or are they hurting your confidence? Because confidence does not come from compliments or awards. It is built through consistency. It's built through habits. It's built through doing the things you say you're going to do. And that's really what separates the ones who reach their full potential from the ones who peak early and then they become a bust. Because a lot of athletes, this is something important to really think about. A lot of athletes, you think that they're all super talented, that must mean they have all this confidence. But if you guys actually talk to and you guys hear a lot of these elite athletes, these talented athletes, a lot of them struggle with the same freaking issue. They struggle with the confidence, they struggle with belief in themselves. And what mistake a lot of them make is that they don't do anything to build that confidence, and so really think about, you might not be the most gifted athlete, and that's okay. You might not be this. You probably know somebody in your town, at your school, in your region, where they're like, "Holy cow, who's that guy or who's that girl?" Like super, super freaking talented, and you're like, "I want to be like that. I want to have that level of talent." But talent definitely opens doors for you. But if you don't put in the work, you're going to become just another athlete who could have done this or could have done that. A lot of those athletes, there are plenty of examples of those athletes who never still reach their full potential. Athletes who had all the talent in the world, but they get injured because they treat their bodies like crap. Or athletes who have all the talent in the world, but then once they get to college or the pros, they completely blow it. You see it everywhere. We see it in the pros. We see it in the news. We see guys like Johnny Manziel or Jamarcus Russell or all these other athletes who had insane amounts of talent, who maybe even played amazing in college, but then they flunk it in the pros. And then there are guys that we don't hear about it who excel in high school and then they bomb in college. We might see it in like a local news or something, but we don't typically see it that much. On a lesser note, we may see guys or hear about guys or girls who in high school, they have, or even in middle school, they have insane talent and then they never go anywhere with it. They never go to a D1 college or anywhere else because their work doesn't match their standards, or it doesn't sorry, their work doesn't match their potential. It doesn't match their goals. They goof off. They do the things that are going to ultimately limit them. And so I like to use a more recent example. This is a one that I just recently learned about, is Zion Williamson. So Zion Williamson making insane amounts of money in the NBA, barely even playing any time on the court. And according to his contract, he could probably be making even more money than he is right now. But because he's injured all the time, he just can't stay on the court. And there's actually a clause in his contract that limits how much money he can make if he's going to be injured for X amount of time. That's crazy. What other athlete has that kind of clause in their contract? Last month I talked about LeBron. I was talking about him on the basketball nutrition podcast and the discipline he has for his body, how much money he invests in his health, and it shows. I mean, this guy's been in the NBA for how many years? Like 20 or plus? Like insane amount of years. One of the greatest to ever play the game. Now I'm a Michael Jordan fan, but like LeBron takes care of his body and it shows. That is how he can stay in the league for as long as he has. And you compare that to a Zion who also had that insane, played insane in high school, played insane in college. Every time he is on the court, shows a lot of light, shows a lot of potential, but he can't stay on the court. And it's because he treats his body like a trash can. So if you, with all the talent you may have or don't have, treat your body like trash, you'll never see that full potential. Zion, who knows what he could be? Who knows if he could be a Hall of Famer? Who knows if he could have the level of legacy that a LeBron or Michael Jordan has? Nobody's going to know that because in 7 years in the NBA, he hasn't shown it. He's shown those glimmers when he's on the court, but otherwise he's not on the court all that often. So really think about, if you want to reach your full potential, what are the habits that you have to have off the court, off the field, that are going to match that are going to allow you to reach your full potential, that is going to help you stay healthy? Because most athletes, that moment when talent catches up to you happens a lot sooner than these guys. The guys like Zion Williams and Jamarcus Russell and Johnny Manziel, the moment that the talent catches up to you happens a lot sooner. It could happen in high school, could happen in college. If you think about, again, the number of athletes who could have gone to college and played in college, or could have gone to the pros but didn't because they just washed out in college or they washed out in high school, as early as high school. So talent is just a starting point. Standards, those expectations that you set for yourself, those habits that you consistently do, that is what decides how far you're going to go and how long you're going to stay there. So, again, we look at a LeBron, we look at Tom Brady, we look at Messi, Ohtani, like they all have great talent. Nobody can say that they don't have talent, but they also have disciplines on and off the field, on and off the court, that allow them to play at a high level all season long. Every year, year after year, for many years. Ohtani's still younger, but he's probably going to get there. Now his pitching arm, who knows? We'll see how that goes. But there's no doubt that Ohtani's a generational talent, but he also has the work to match that talent off the field. I also want to talk about Yamamoto though. So for those who are into baseball, who watched the World Series, a lot of people who weren't into baseball watched the World Series or watched some of the playoffs. Look at Yamamoto. He pitched 2 complete games. He pitched in back-to-back World Series games. So he went and pitched 6, 7 innings, almost 100 pitches. Comes back and pitches another 2.5 innings to close out the final game of the World Series, so the Dodgers win. If he didn't play that final game, who knows what could have happened? And when you look at this elite level talent of how he plays, you can't just look at the talent. You can't just look at, oh, he's got genetics, or oh, he's Japanese or whatever. It's like, no, look at his freaking disciplines. If you want to be an elite athlete, look at what Yamamoto is doing off the field. He's his pre-game routines. It reminds me of Ichiro. I grew up watching Ichiro. I used to watch him out on the baseball field doing all of his stretches and routines because we always sat in right field and always got to watch him, and just how he always kept himself loose. What injuries? He barely had any real injury issues his whole career. And you look at Yamamoto, he's probably going to be the same way as long as he sticks to what he knows is working for him. I actually recently had somebody or somebody I was messaging, a pitching expert, who was talking about, as long as he can stick to his things, he's probably going to, play many years and is going to just continue freaking killing it. Compared to all these other athletes, all these other pitchers who are, having Tommy John surgeries and whatnot, even Ohtani, but the other important piece on that, It says mid-game routines. Go and look at, if you type in like Yamamoto in the dugout during the complete game, or like Yamamoto like notebook. Like there's a video I think Fox or MLB or somebody posted, and he's literally journaling like crazy in the dugout. Who knows what he was writing? You know, you might be able to see from the video, you might be able to assume what athletes are doing that. What athletes, whether that be a mental performance thing, like if you struggle with the mindset stuff, you know, journaling things, putting things on paper, that's one thing. It could be maybe he's planning out or making notes about the hitters that he just went up against, so that the next time he faces them, he's more solidified on, okay, this thing worked, this thing didn't work. You know, what if you treated your game like that? Not just watching game film, not just doing things in between games, but what if you freaking did it during the game? You're making notes, you're doing little things to get you your mind right, to get you your mind clear. Dude, that would change your freaking game. These are the types of standards that elite athletes have. You know, Yamamoto plays in a league of very talented players, full of talented players. There's like the entire league is full of the highest level players in baseball. But he chooses to set even higher standards than everybody else for himself, so that he can excel in that league. Not just show up, not just play a year, not just sit in the dugout, but actually play, and play at a high level. That is what separates you. So if you feel behind right now, if you feel like you are not reaching your full potential, here's how you can start changing that. Start small. Pick 3 areas to raise your standards. You know, pick a training thing. What is one training thing? You know, speed, 30 minutes twice a week, dedicated training. Maybe it's on the recovery side. You are cutting screens off the last 30 minutes before bed. Maybe on the nutrition side, it's making sure you're eating a solid breakfast, not just cereal, not just Pop Tarts, not just a bagel, but a real breakfast every single day. Pick 3 areas, raise those standards, do them consistently, and just look at how much farther you go just from those 3 simple habits. And then stack them. Once you get good at those, once they feel like they're just part of your daily routines, then stack them, add new things to them, do additional things. And you might fall sometimes. You might slip. The screens one, the sleep one, those are probably the hardest ones to stick to. If you stick to them for a while and then you work on some new things, and then maybe you go and you start falling behind on the screens again, then work on it again. Go back to it. Let's readjust. But let's just keep stacking days. Let's start small and stay consistent. You know, this isn't about being perfect. It's about proving you can follow through daily, because you don't need a perfect plan. You don't need a perfect meal plan or diet or whatever. You just need a higher standard that you can actually live by. You know, just imagine this. Imagine this being you. So this is the title of my book, but I want you to really just pause. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to, or you have to listen to me. You don't have to look at me, but even close your eyes and just think about this being you. From nobody to noticed, small wins, real habits, the year everything started changing. What if this year completely changed your future? What if this year you finally started taking the actions that match the goals that you have? If you want to reach your full potential, start stacking small wins, start stacking real habits, so that this can be the year that changes your future and your potential as an athlete, and really as a human in general. You know, it's not about some crazy diet or burning yourself out. It's about stacking days. It's about being consistent. It's about showing up when you don't feel like it. You do that, and your confidence is going to spike, and you will go 10x further than you thought was possible. You might think, yeah, I could probably go D3, I could probably go D2. Who knows? You might be able to play D1. It's tough. It's tougher than it ever has been, but you never know if you don't try. So you can do the most with what you got. You can make the most out of it. Do what you can to go shoot for the moon. Shoot for the moon. You know, and at least if you make it to the stars, great. you probably made it a lot further than you would if you set small goals. So don't just set small goals, set those high goals, but make sure your standards match it. Make sure your actions match those goals, and then be okay with wherever you land, because it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. It's about how far you're able to truly go, by setting those high standards. If you go the whole length, you go D1, you go pro, great, that is awesome. But remember the journey, remember the process, remember all of the work you put in to get there, and be satisfied in that no matter what the outcome actually is. Now, if you want a copy of the book, check the link in the caption below. Not only do you get the book, but when you open it up to the introduction, that very first chapter, there's a little link that you get, and there's a bunch of tools on there. There's a 14-day guide to help you start building habits consistently, that helps you increase your awareness of what you're doing wrong and how you can improve. There are tools on fast food. There's tools on same meal plans, all sorts of different things that you can pull from that. And a lot of them are not even on my main website. So check that out. Link is in the caption below. And if if you found this useful, if you know friends, teammates, athletes who need to hear this wake up call, then share it with them. This is how we can raise the standard. This is how we can help others and help ourselves reach our full potential, is by building them up, by equipping them, by giving them the tools to help them succeed. So if this was useful, share it with them. And as always, keep striving for greatness.